We are on a journey to explore a world of yummy flavor right here in Melbourne. With its diverse culture thriving everywhere, what are we going to find today?
Today we are going to take you to the Irish food restaurant in Flemington, Melbourne.
Just behind us.
The Quietman Pub is 5 kilometers away from Melbourne CBD. This pub has been serving classic Ireland and UK cuisine for over 20 years.
Today we have our distinguished guest, Cathy.
Hello.
Our dear friend Cathy has spent many years of her life living and working in the UK and traveled to Ireland during her time there. Cathy is a talented fibre artist. Check out her Instagram if you are interested in meeting. She will be our local guide today, showing us the food and culture in the UK and Ireland. And let's get into it now with some Guinness, a quintessential Irish beverage.
Cheers.
Cheers. It's like a latte form, so it's a beer latte.
Yum.
Yeah, it actually tastes a lot better than what I had before.
Yes. It's actually a lot lighter. I remember the first time I tried the Guinness, I thought it was going to be heavy, but it's not. It's really light and quite soft.
It's
yeah.
really good, smells good as well.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Guinness.
Yeah.
How long have you been living in UK?
Probably now, how long have we been in Australia? 13 years, about the same. 13 years, yeah. Most of my adult life in the UK and Australia.
Do you think UK and Australia are very different?
Many parts of Australia, you can say that the culture is quite similar to the UK. But in the UK, people are a lot more intense, or what Aussies call them very uptight. You know, Aussies are very relaxed.
Do you mean in terms of how they speak or just the way they do
The
it?
way people move and how they speak as well, yeah. When I was working in London, you never see people stroll in the street. You know, it's always marching.
Yeah.
Everybody's marching.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember sometimes I walk in Melbourne, in the Melbourne streets. I walk fast and I kind of going in and out. Most people just go sauntering.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
When I went back to Taiwan, I will see that difference. I live in Taipei, and
Yeah.
people are, usually they try to get things done quickly or they walk very fast.
Yeah.
My parents would be saying to me, "Why are you walking so slowly?"
I know. Yeah.
And when you are in Chongqing, you just can't walk slowly. People will push you.
I know. Yeah.
Too many people on the street.
Yeah. But it's true. It's the pace is so much slower here.
So you spend most of the time in London.
Yes. Yeah. I used to work in London, and I lived in what they call home county, Hertfordshire. Yeah. Because London is work town. People commute into London from everywhere around London. They travel into London in the morning, and after work, everybody go out. So in the London CBD, it's like a ghost town after 5, 6. Yeah. So there are millions and millions of people every day traveling in and out of London.
Just like Beijing.
Yeah.
Because the central
Yeah.
area is just too expensive.
Yeah.
I think Melbourne is slowly moving towards that direction.
I think so. Yes.
People are starting to move to the outskirts.
That's right. Yeah. It's too expensive. Food-wise, Melbourne is definitely the best. Yeah. Australia on the whole is better than the UK, and Melbourne is the best. When I was working in Leeds in 2018, 2019, the food had improved a lot, but compared to Melbourne, there's no comparison. It was in Melbourne, say for example, if you want to have a decent bowl of pho, you can go into any Vietnamese restaurant. It's hard to find a non-decent pho. Maybe London's different because I was working in Leeds. It was just. I know. How can you know?
saw some video about London, and they were
Yeah.
like, oh, it's very multicultural, that. And I
Yes.
thought, oh, okay, maybe it's quite similar to Melbourne.
Yeah, it is in a way, but well, what I will say is that in the UK it's quite easy to find decent Indian food and very good Indian food. Curries, or
We have a
curries
very
national
authentic
dish.
Indian food in West Food Square.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I should go.
We can try next time.
Yeah.
Again.
Cathy, do you know a lot about Irish food? Have you had
I was trying
any
to think of what I had when I was in Ireland. Chips, shepherd's pie, I suppose, and Irish stew. They have lots of lamb and potatoes. There's a bangers and mash, and that's more of a British thing. Bangers just the sausages and the mashed potatoes. I'm not sure how Irish the chicken curry is, but in the UK, the national dish is actually chicken curry, chicken korma.
Home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Taste of the home.
In the taste of home menu, would you say these are more Irish than
Yeah.
UK food?
Yeah. Can I have a beef and Guinness pie, please?
Shepherd's pie.
What am I having? Oh my god. Bangers and mash.
All the dishes are beautifully cooked and the portion is massive. They're very similar to Aussie pies and sausage, but does have that authentic Irish taste to it.
Do you know what sort of food the English people cook at home?
At home, a lot of boiling and roasting, not much else. I think these days, because there's so many cooking shows, British people start to cook more adventurously at home. I remember my mother-in-law, she did very good roast. You know, her roast dinners and desserts were brilliant. But they boil vegetables to death until there's no color left.
Really?
Yeah,
Really
all mushy. Yeah,
makes me hungry talking about food.
yeah.
Food. I'll cook that for you next time.
No. I'll enjoy my lunch here.
Yeah, but she did very good roast potatoes and roast dinner, roast beef, lamb, pork, and everything.
If you go out to a UK restaurant, would you expect something different? Or is it still roast and potato?
Well, these days, I mean, what is a UK restaurant really? But you know, in the UK, almost every single restaurant, you're looking at something else, some from other cultures. Thai is very popular, curry is the top, Chinese, Italian, French, Greek. I suppose the pubs, you know, in the UK, you go to a pub, you expect to find British food. So most likely fish and chips, roast, and what they call carvery. And here you can find them in some food courts here as well, carvery. So it's basically just a roast meat and with vegetables and roast potatoes. Yeah.
Is it always like a pub setting?
Yes, quite often. Yeah.
Because I was looking at what sort of UK or Irish
Yeah.
the result and pubs are they're all pubs.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I first arrived in the UK, there wasn't much food in pubs per se. There were very, very simple, basic chips and stuff. That was in the early 90s. And by late 90s, the pub food started to really come along. And they started serving proper food in the pubs. I think because they want to bring the family in, because there used to be children couldn't get into pubs, and so there was only just the adults. I never used to like the old style pubs because it was just very smoky and the floor was sticky and the stale alcohol and tobacco. And it's just awful. I didn't like the old type of pubs.
But when you say old type of pub, does it look different or is it just the way they operate?
Both. There were you never used to find sit-down table, as everybody standing around at the bar. Very rarely you might find some seats along the walls. Mostly people just stand up. Yeah.
They can eat more when they stand up.
Do they?
They fit more people in. Yeah.
I think it's very hard for, if you start a restaurant in a foreign country, it's very hard to keep the authentic of the food because you have to adjust the flavor to local people.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't get enough customers, so you won't survive.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these days, if you go into any UK pub, you'll find pretty decent food, mostly fusion. Quite often they have outside the beer garden with tables and with children's play area because they want to serve families. Yeah.
I suppose Australian food is quite similar.
Yes.
Yeah, what
Yes.
is Australian food?
I know exactly. What is Australian food? Yeah. Yeah.
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips are from UK.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In UK, people usually use vinegar, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like put vinegar
Salt and vinegar.
Salt and vinegar.
Yeah. If you have fish and chips, they just give you salt and vinegar.
To dip?
No, you just sprinkle it on
Oh,
the
wow.
fish and chips. Yeah.
Vinegar instead of the lemon or lamb.
Lemon, too exotic.
Really?
Well, for the UK it is.
Really?
I remember in the early 90s there were still fish and chips and serving with newspapers. When you buy fish and chips, it was still wrapped in newspapers.
Wow.
It smells nice somehow, with the print and with the
When you eat, you
warm
can see
and
the ink on
yeah.
the fish and chips.
Yeah, but the combination and salt and vinegar, and you drizzle it because they wrap it kind of in a cone thing. When you buy fish and chips, and then the chips at the bottom and the fish on top, and then they just sprinkle
I think
salt
it's
and vinegar
some
on
kind
top.
of a specialized newspaper and not just a newspaper.
So why would I have specialized newspaper?
Well, actually, these days there are companies that make newspaper for the authentic look.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is there any sort of UK food that you miss that you couldn't get it here?
Yes, pork pies. Pork pies is a pastry. It's cold. You eat it cold. Well, you could get in the pub, and also you quite often take it on to picnics. It's a pastry, but the pastry is a bit hard, and then the inside is pork, some vegetable. I don't know how it's made. And then there's some pork fat that is jellified, and you cut it, and you can get those anywhere you go.
And you eat it cold.
You eat it cold.
So you don't cook it first?
Yeah, it's already cooked, but you just eat it cold with pickles. Yeah. And also Scotch eggs. You don't get, that's what I missed.
What's Scotch egg?
Yeah, what is you boil the eggs first, but you don't boil it, not hard boiled, very softly boiled. And then you wrap it, in a layer of mince mixture. You can use sausage meat, or you can make your own, just pork mince and with spices, and then wrap it. And then you roll it in breadcrumbs, and then you also eat it cold. Yeah.
Really cold. I think I tried it somewhere in the cafe, but it's warm, it's not cold.
You're supposed to eat it cold.
Okay.
That looks quite interesting.
Yes, yeah. I should make some for you.
But in terms of the accent, this Irish accent is more like the Scottish one.
There's similarities, yes.
Scottish
Irish
accent is very hard to understand.
Yes.
I find it-
Irish accent is softer, more lyrical.
Yeah, sometimes even English accent is hard for me to understand.
Oh,
They
depends on
pronounce the
where.
word-
For example, London has London accent, and then there's southeast and southwest, and West Country, and then there's the North Midlands, and then the North of Manchester, Liverpool, and then Yorkshire, and Newcastle. They're all different. They're all very different.
Big country.
Yeah,
Just
but
like
it's not
our-
that big. England is not that big. It's tiny. I think England is smaller than Victoria, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was around the same size. Yeah, around the same size as
But
Victoria.
population-wise, it's
Yes.
Much bigger.
Yes, but the accents are so many, so many accents. Yeah, so it's not surprised. You don't understand. When I went to the UK, because my in-laws' family was from North London, so they spoke kind of more with London accent. And then London accent is also different. It depends where you're from, the West End, East End, south of the river, north of the river. It's all different. But the most famous London accent is what they call the Cockney accent.
What's that?
Yeah, Cockney dialect. I would call it dialect. They uses many slang words.
So hard to understand if you
it's
don't
very hard
know anything
to
about it.
understand because they use a short phrase instead of a word.
Yeah.
For example, the stairs, instead of saying the stairs, and then they will say apple and pears. That's stairs because it rhymes. And they will say go up the apple and pears. That's go up the stairs. Yeah, and then in the old days, the telephone, and they would say, oh, call someone on the dog and bone, telephone.
That doesn't make
It's
sense.
hard. It's
It
hard
doesn't
to
make sense
Yeah.
only because it rhymes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dog and bone, telephone. Yeah, and then it evolves, and when early 2000, and then they started to go to the pub and have a couple of Britney Spears beers. Or a couple of Britney. That's beers. So it's all about rhyming.
I thought Australian stays weird enough.
Yeah, I couldn't. I remember for the first 6 months after I arrived in England, I didn't understand much. Even with my in-laws, it took me a while to get used to the way they spoke. And the one thing that you need to be very careful when you go to the UK and then Ireland, there's a Republic of Ireland, which is a separate country. We're very proud of that. And then there's a Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. The Great Britain includes England, Wales, and Scotland. That's Great Britain. And then the Northern Ireland make up these 4 countries. They will refer to that 4 countries make up the United Kingdom. And if you called some Irishman or Scottish or Welshman English by accident, they would be very upset. Yes, because in Chinese, it's you don't have that Ingguo. When we say Ingguo, we refer to the United Kingdom, right? Yeah. So you need to be very careful.
Better remember that.
Yeah.
And the Guinness is really nice.
I'm a bit drunk.
You drink too
It's
fast.
getting a little bit bitter.
Towards the end.
Yeah.
So is there other type of beer that's famous?
They have normally local. They'll have local brewery. Each pub will have a local brew of some lager or ale. There is a pub in Woodend that has a brewery at the back. So we had a tour of the brewery, and then they showed us the different malts, the toaster malts, the different, the very dark ones, the medium, light, different things they use to brew, and then they have a pub at the front. Yeah.
Thank you, Cathy, for joining us today and helping us to understand the culture and food of UK and Ireland.
You're welcome.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Situated at the corner of Racecourse Road and Rankins Road, Flemington, the Quietman Pub is easily accessible by Tram 57 from Melbourne City, or a short stroll from Newmarket Station if you prefer travelling by train. The Quietman Pub also hosts St. Patrick's Day event annually on 17th of March, and a portion of Rankins Road are usually blacked out for the day. Don't forget to book your ticket if you want to join the party.
You check out Jacka and Nika, love their video and subscribe.
If you enjoyed this episode of Cultural Food Scene Melbourne, please like and share this video. We really appreciate your support. We have lots of interesting places planned out, so subscribe to our channel and we'll see you next time.